sirens sudden, relentless. A sky streaked with contrails that look nothing like airshow trails. Soldiers moving under pale dawn light. Armored columns cutting through fields. And civilians in towns that thought themselves safe. Opening curtains to a new kind of fear. This is not a scene from a film. This is Zapad 2025. And it is happening now. According to Reuters, U.S. military officers were present as observers at the Zapad 2025 drills, the first American attendance since 2021. A small action that sends a very large diplomatic signal. Here's what I'll do. I'll walk you, step by step, through what happened, why world capitals are alarmed, how the drills were conducted, 3 realistic escalation paths, and crucially how this can touch your wallet, your commute, and your family's safety. By the end, you'll have the facts, the scenarios, and the practical stakes. Stay with me. The timeline is compact, and every date matters. On September 9th, Poland announced partial closure of its border with Belarus ahead of the exercises. On September 12th, Russia and Belarus launched Zapad 2025 near NATO borders. On September 15th, U.S. observers were seen in Belarus during the exercises. On September 16th, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko said the drills included rehearsals for the launch of Russian tactical nuclear weapons. Those are not rumors, they are public facts reported by international outlets. And they change the calculations of every defense ministry watching. Let's unpack the scale. Leaders from Moscow and Minsk say Zapad 2025 involved large troop formations and advanced weaponry, and coverage describes the presence of hypersonic missiles and cruise missile launches. During the exercises, Russian officials and state media put large numbers on display, hundreds of aircraft, thousands of vehicles, and shows of advanced capabilities such as the Oreshnik hypersonic system. When governments rehearse launches and show off high-end systems, that is both training and political signaling. Poland's response was immediate and palpable. After reported drone incursions and what Warsaw described as airspace violations, Poland tightened its border, deployed a significant number of troops to its eastern flank, and coordinated closely with NATO partners to bolster air defenses. That redeployment, reported in regional coverage, is not a parade. It's a change in force posture along a NATO frontier, and it has downstream economic and human consequences. Now the how. What does it mean to rehearse a tactical nuclear launch? Put simply, militaries practice the procedures tied to command and control, weapon handling, secure communications, and targeting routines. Practicing those steps does not necessarily mean that live warheads were moved or armed. Nonetheless, the public admission by a head of state that such procedures were part of the exercises significantly raises the political temperature. That language rehearsing nuclear launches transforms the narrative from conventional maneuvers to a story with a nuclear dimension. And that changes how NATO analysts, regional leaders, and markets react. Let's pause. Quick anchor. Zapad 2025 is large, close to NATO borders. U.S. observers were present. Lukashenko publicly said tactical nuclear rehearsals were practiced. Poland moved troops and tightened its border. Hold those facts. They are the spine for every scenario we map. Next, Scenario 1, containment. The most likely and the least destructive path at first glance. In this outcome, incidents like drone crossings are treated as violations, to be deterred rather than triggers. For wider conflict, NATO and Poland increase patrols, close certain border crossings temporarily, and issue diplomatic protests and targeted sanctions. Trade slows, trucks wait at borders, customs processing tightens, and insurers raise premiums for freight crossing tense corridors. Energy markets react to heightened risk with short spikes, but supplies remain broadly intact. This scenario hurts economies and households, but the political system contains escalation. Reuters and Associated Press reporting on troop movements and border measures underline how plausible this containment path is. Scenario 2, proxy escalation, and cyber tit for tat. Here, misinterpretations and localized strikes do not lead to open interstate war, but they widen the battlefield into indirect forms. Expect an uptick in cyber operations targeting logistics firms, ports, and utilities. Expect deniable strikes or sabotage on supply chains. Sanctions escalate, and companies reroute shipments at greater cost and longer transit times. Energy firms hedge by diverting cargoes, and merchants increase prices to cover volatility and insurance hikes. The Associated Press and Guardian analyses warn that modern conflicts often spread laterally through proxies and cyberspace, and that is a realistic midline threat. Scenario 3: Rapid escalation into the extreme. This is the high-stakes, low-probability route, but it matters because of the consequences. Imagine a misfired intercept or a downed aircraft over a contested corridor, attributed to the wrong actor. Add the nuclear dimension, a public admission that tactical nuclear launch rehearsals were part of the drills tightens decision windows. If Moscow or Minsk judges an imminent threat, even a symbolic posture change raised alerts. Redeployments of nuclear assets could provoke an immediate NATO response. From there, deterrence dynamics could spiral. Reuters reporting on the rehearsals, combined with on-the-ground force displays, forms the factual backbone for why planners cannot ignore this path. Quick anchor 3 takeaways before we move to personal impact. 1. These drills are both training and messaging. 2. The U.S. observation is a diplomatic variable that complicates interpretations. 3. The nuclear language shifts risk calculus. Remember those 3. Now, the real question: how does this touch daily life? Energy. Europe's energy flows are finely balanced, and the region remains interdependent. Disruptions caused by sanctions, border closures, or strikes on terminals will tighten supplies and spike prices. Households could see higher heating bills, commuters will feel price rises at the pump, and businesses face higher operating and shipping costs. Markets are hypersensitive to geopolitical headlines. When Reuters and other outlets ran the initial reports, energy futures reacted. In the medium scenario, expect volatility within days and sustained price pressure if tensions persist. Economy and trade. Border closures and stricter checks slow freight. Logistics chains extend by days. Perishable goods risk spoilage, and consumer prices creep up. For companies reliant on overland transit through Belarus to Central Europe, delays are immediate and painful. Insurance and bypass routes increase costs passed to the consumer. Guardian reporting on Poland's troop movements and border measures shows how domestic economies are often the first to feel the friction in these crises. Safety and families. Imagine a parent in a border town whose commute now crosses a checkpoint, whose child's school plan changes due to troop movements, who watches military convoys from their window. That is the human side. Anxiety, disrupted services, and the strain of living near a militarized frontier. Families with reservists or service members face uncertainty. Local clinics and emergency services operate under added pressure. These are not abstract consequences. Several regional reports describe civilians already feeling the impact. Cyber and infrastructure. In the proxy scenario, cyber attacks on ports, rail schedulers, and logistics platforms are likely. These attacks are designed to be deniable, to sow disruption without an overt military engagement. Expect insolvency pressure on small shippers, banking transaction delays, and targeted service outages. Businesses should review backup procedures and update incident response plans. Families should keep digital hygiene and be ready for temporary service disruptions. Media coverage of past geopolitical crises shows this pattern repeating, and analysts warn that the same could unfold here. Mini recap. Drills were large and close to NATO borders. U.S. observers were present. Lukashenko said tactical nuclear rehearsals were practiced, and Poland tightened its border. Those facts explain why markets, militaries, and families are watching. Before I close this first part, one more crucial fact drop. Reuters reports confirm the U.S. observers' attendance and Lukashenko's comment about rehearsed tactical nuclear launches, a combination that simultaneously opens diplomatic channels and raises risk thresholds. This is the evidence that makes Zapad 2025 more than routine training. It is a geopolitical event with practical, immediate consequences. They say worst mistakes begin as routine and exercise. A misread message, a late order. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to walk you deeper into the decision points that could flip the script, give you two human stories that make the headlines, personal, and finish with the fresh, hard fact that should keep every capital awake tonight. Keep your attention. The margin between normal and crisis is thinner than you think. First, the decision points. Every scenario we mapped earlier has moments where a single choice can make the difference between containment and catastrophe. In the containment path, decision makers choose clarity over escalation. That means public, verifiable information, clear statements about what was and wasn't practiced, agreed channels for hotlines between militaries, and transparent reporting of incursions. If Poland and NATO respond with measured air defense postures, limited border controls, and coordinated diplomatic pressure, markets will jitter but calm within days. Reuters reporting on the drills and the Polish border move shows how quickly measured responses can keep things regional. Second, attribution. When a drone is down, whose finger points first matters. If the immediate reaction is to escalate based on assumptions, misattribution can cascade. The more states rely on rapid, public accusations, the higher the risk of an overreaction. That's why militaries train to verify before they retaliate. Yet verification takes time, and in that time, politics can demand action. The AP's analysis of the war, games, and drone incidents underscores how attribution ambiguity is a classic trigger for unintended escalation. Third, signaling. Public choreography of forces, hypersonic displays, bomber overflights, rehearsed missile sequences carries messages. Are these shows of deterrence? Or are they bargaining chips? When Lukashenko publicly said the drills rehearsed tactical nuclear launches, that was an elevated signal, a line drawn in public. That admission tightens decision windows. Reuters recorded that comment, and analysts immediately recalculated worst-case outcomes. A rehearsed nuclear procedure, even unarmed, changes perception, and perception drives response. Now, let me make the scenarios more concrete by adding likely timelines and triggers. In the containment track, Day 1 involves increased patrols and temporary border checks. Within 48-72 hours, customs backlog grows. Insurance premiums rise for freight lanes through the region. Energy futures spike modestly. Governments issue travel advisories. Diplomatic delegations shuttle to de-escalate. In other words, pain, but predictable pain. Delays, higher prices, stressed supply chains. Reuters and Guardian reporting about troop deployments and border closures show exactly this pattern unfolding in the opening days. In the proxy or cyber track, triggers include sabotage of a logistics hub or a major cyber attack, rendering a port's booking system inoperable for hours. Within a week, shipping lines reroute, cost of delivery rises, and short-term shortages of specialty goods appear. Cyber intrusions, by design, allow states to inflict pain while avoiding overt military reply. AP coverage of modern conflict dynamics explains why cyber is the preferred escalation instrument in medium-intensity crises. The extreme track is the one planners simulate all night. A kinetic incident, a downed aircraft, a misfired missile, or an accidental strike happens near a border or over international waters, and national control centers interpret it as deliberate. With tactical nuclear rehearsals publicly disclosed, the psychological stakes are higher. A perceived imminent strike could provoke nuclear signaling, raised alert levels, dispersal of assets, political posturing that forces alliances to declare readiness. That's the scenario with the fastest, most dangerous escalation curve, and Reuters reporting on the rehearsal comments is the reason analysts take it seriously. Now, 2 human vignettes, concrete, short, and true to life. So this stays about people, not just geopolitics. Vignette 1. Maria runs a freight forwarding company in a Polish border town. Her morning begins with 40 trucks due to cross into Lithuania and Germany. Suddenly, one border crossing is closed. Her drivers are redirected. Phones ring all day with managers from factories demanding updated ETAs. Insurance calls to raise rates arrive by noon. Maria has to tell a small bakery client that a shipment of specialty flour will be delayed at least 3 days. For Maria, the geopolitical news becomes a line item on her P&L and a direct hit to community livelihoods. Local reporting on Poland's closures illustrates dozens of similar entrepreneurs in the same squeeze. Vignette 2. Ahmed is a systems admin at a logistics terminal in a Baltic port. On a Tuesday, a distributed denial of service attack floods his company's booking servers. Containers cannot be manifested correctly. Trucks queue at the gate. Customs can't verify manifests. The company's incident response kicks in, but for 12 hours, business grinds near zero. Small firms depending on that port are hit hardest. Ahmed stays late, patching and coordinating with staff. For him, this is a war played on keyboards and one small, persistent reminder that modern conflict can look like a tech outage until it looks a lot worse. Analysts have repeatedly pointed to this type of digital pressure as a likely lever in midline escalations. Back to policy. What should governments do to lower the odds of miscalculation? First, open, reliable communication channels. Hotlines between military commands, pre-agreed verification protocols, and shared incident reporting standards by time and prevent first-mover panics. Second, calibrated deterrence, not theatrical escalation. Visible defense can deter, but performative shows of firepower risk misinterpretation. Third, diplomacy. Engage neutral parties to verify facts on the ground, and use multilateral platforms to reduce bilateral tension. These are practical steps. Reuters' coverage of observer invitations and the U.S. decision to accept shows how dialogue can be used as both a risk-reducing tool and a political statement. What should businesses and households do? Stress test critical supply lines, diversify where possible, and review cyber incident plans. Households should consider modest short-term budgeting for potential spikes in fuel and food prices, and keep emergency contact plans for family members in border regions. Local authorities should publish clear emergency instructions and ensure that health and transport services have contingency plans. These are not panic measures. They are prudent risk management. Another short recap anchors to carry forward. 1. The presence of U.S. observers changes diplomatic calculation. 2. Public rehearse comments about tactical nuclear procedures increase psychological risk. 3. Border closures and troop deployments already create economic and human friction. Those anchors explain why policy choices in the next 72 hours matter so much. Now for the final, fresh fact drop that should shape how you interpret what comes next. Reuters has confirmed multiple times that U.S. military officers observed Zapad 2025 first since 2021, and that Lukashenko publicly said the drills rehearsed the launch of Russian tactical nuclear weapons. Those two facts, taken together, form a complex political moment. They point to a tentative opening for dialogue, concurrent with an escalation in signaling. In plain terms, diplomats are talking, while war games that include nuclear rehearsal are underway. That tension between diplomacy and weaponry is the exact environment where miscalculation is most likely. Let's close with a direct, practical checklist, not panic. Practical: watch reputable sources. Rely on Reuters, AP, The Guardian, and Al Jazeera for verification. For businesses, review shipment alternatives and update cyber incident playbooks. For households, expect possible short-term price spikes, tighten budgets, and know local emergency protocols. For policymakers, prioritize verification, open communication lines, and measured deterrence. Finally, the alarm. When leaders publicly admit rehearsals of nuclear procedures, the political signal is not neutral. It is a warning, coupled with the visible deployment of tens of thousands of troops and the admission of international observers. Zapad 2025 sits at a razor's edge between statement and incident. The most dangerous mistakes are not conspiracies. They are human errors, misreads, and timing mismatches. A single misattributed incident can transform a border drill into a diplomatic crisis. If you liked this analysis, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss important updates like this. Let us know in the comments below which scenario you think is the most likely. Subscribe our channel for concise, verified briefings. We will monitor the official lines. We will track the military movements, and we will highlight the real implications for energy, trade, and safety, always grounded in mainstream reporting. For now, be alert, not alarmed. Prepare, but don't panic. Keep an eye on the verified headlines. And remember, in geopolitics, the smallest misstep on the ground can redraw maps in ways no one intended.